we actually are going to be taking a look into one of my favorite bands of all time. I feel like there's no way to describe this band. Well, I mean, I'm talking about the name. I feel like there's no way I could say the name without being demonetized. Do we really want to call, for the rest of the video, do we really want to say LSD? Or do we really want to say Life, Sex, and Death? I feel like this video is going to get demonetized no matter what. Be that as it may, I think I actually kind of cut the recording and redid this because I realized saying the words deep diving into LSD is possibly one of the few choice words to where I was like, I think we need to rethink everything. There was so many things I thought I knew, and I guess I actually don't, because I actually did do some research, and I'm coming across stuff to where I thought I knew, and now I'm sitting here thinking, maybe I don't. Because there is a lot to break down from this band. Life, Sex, and Death is a band that is like no other. And I mean that in a very positive way. But also, I could have swore I read an article somewhere that the frontman, Stanley, passed away. And I'm basically seeing zero evidence to say that. But also at the same time, maybe he did, or maybe he didn't. So in order to really deep dive into Life, Sex, and Death, we actually have to take a look at the early 90s of rock and roll. So heavy metal was very big and popular in the 80s, but there was all these hair bands that really kind of ruined the vibe of metal. So people kind of preferred more of the Iron Maiden, Motorhead, and Metallica vibe, to where you have a little bit of grit to everything. But over time, we started to see bands like Rat, bands like Poison and Motley Crue, and to have these feminine-looking men all of a sudden, doing this kind of type of music, it felt like the genre that we were all loving it didn't feel the same because of these hair bands. It just kind of felt like it was ruining the mood that everyone else was feeling. And ultimately, that ended up for other genres to really take flight. And needless to say, grunge took over. And grunge was the big popular thing that everyone had to get their hands on, that everyone wanted to do. So much so that Rob Halford from Judas Priest completely left Judas Priest to start a new band. And surprisingly, we're actually going to be taking a look at Fight at some point. They are a grunge band, and there's definitely one song that I absolutely love. Get that. We'll get around to that at some point. But for now, we'll see. Other bands was also kind of changing their style as well. Some people probably don't know this, but Pantera. I mean, yeah, that Pantera. Pantera, they were once upon a time a hair band. And so you could kind of pick up on a theme as to what all I'm doing here.
We started immediately jamming at Vincent Durrell's house out in the garage.
I got in the band, they said, you gotta wear spandex. I said, no way. But I eventually put on some freaking spandex.
We were burning it up. A bunch of skinny little kids dressed like girls and spandex jumping up and down, singing about heavy, scary stuff.
By 1986, inspired by the heavy grooves of Metallica and Slayer, Pantera shed their hair metal gloss for a more aggressive approach.
There was this style of hard rock and heavy metal that wanted to have that more grit, and there was this idea of like, you gotta get away from all these different hair bands. And because of that, enter Life, Sex, and Death. Life, Sex, and Death has a very unique storied history. Mostly because everything that you thought you knew about this band is also just as vague as everything else. Mostly because I can't find any articles to say when this band got their start. I can't really find any articles to really go into detail of what really happened when Life, Sex, and Death disbanded. Which puts me in a very awkward position, because how do I do a video if there is no information? What do we do? Well, we can take a look at Stanley. Who is he? He seems to be a very eccentric homeless man, but he also could have been something else outright entirely. How about we take a look at the very first music video from Life, Sex, and Death, entitled American Noise. So it appears that if you look at American Noise, Stanley is coherent. Stanley is an individual who, shall we say, looks and seems normal. But he also could be multiple other things. Now, again, I'm going by recollection and articles that I read years ago, so I want to apologize for any kind of type of information, because I feel like because all the articles and stuff that I'm seeing now, everything seems very vague, and it's hard to, again, do a video like this to where I want to give all of my viewers a possibility in seeing all the different dynamics. Much like a detective trying to decipher what exactly took place, you gotta take every little piece of evidence before coming forward with your ultimate conclusion. Unfortunately, I feel like this video isn't really going to have a conclusion, just a series of what ifs and what most likely seems to be the case. Some people speculate that essentially Stanley had a complete and mental breakdown, that this man suffered a bunch of mental illness, and here's where we could have one particular split. The mental illness. We could take a look at that in a scenario to where, what if the mental illness was legitimate? So, if the mental illness was legitimate, then does Stanley know that he's in a band, and is he making profit off of it? And the other thing is, if he's having this mental breakdown, why isn't anybody helping him? Now, for me, I think it's kind of obvious that this is most likely and highly not the case, because being a fan of professional wrestling, I am very familiar with people having to go through, shall we say, characters, gimmicks. So Stanley is the best professional wrestler you guys have probably ever seen. Most likely because I feel like the gimmick is kind of blatantly obvious. Because if someone did have a mental breakdown, why the hell would they be in a band and not, say, seeking therapy? Looking for help? Because somebody is going to be self-aware. Now, it is possible that there could be, like, people within the band that, again, let's just go back to that mental illness is real thought. It is possible that somebody is suffering from a mental illness of some kind, mental breakdown, and all of this happens. But unfortunately, there's going to be producers, record labels, managers, and supervisors. There's going to be way too many cooks in the kitchen. Somebody is going to pick up on something. So I heavily doubt that it's one thing to where it could be internal within the band, like, oh yeah, he's perfectly fine when he's clearly going through a mental illness. Again, I don't think that's the case, but I also do believe that there are some people that actually took the gimmick as a full shoot. I'm telling you right now, it's a work. I'm going to say this, and I'm also going to say, I heard this one from word of mouth, so take it with a pinch of salt, because I cannot seem to find any articles and different stuff, but also there is a good chance I might have to do like an update video to all of this information, because for all I know, I'm probably going to get corrected down in the comments. And one of the things that I heard from word of mouth is actually Stanley actually comes from a middle-income family. Apparently there was a family business that essentially, I believe the actual name of the individual of the frontman to Life, Sex, and Death is actually Chris Stan. And Chris Stan, apparently he has a family-owned business that he was actually supposed to inherit, and he ended up turning it down to go into this music career. But let's just say that it's not a work, that this is a shoot. Well, if it is a shoot, then there are way too many cooks in the kitchen that somebody is going to say something, and essentially police are just going to get involved. Which is why, if everyone's in on the gimmick and everyone understands, then everyone is just gonna turn a blind eye to everything. And some people might say, well, this is wrong, because the guy is making fun of mental illness. Now, to be fair, there was once upon a time people actually had a sense of humor. Honestly, when I first take a look at the Stanley gimmick, and I think for now on, I'm just going to go ahead and just call it a gimmick because I think it's blatantly obvious, and I even have some video evidence to say so. One of my tidbits of research that I was able to find is there is a man by the name of Alex Kane. Now, I did come across this particular podcast, and you actually hear from Alex himself essentially how the whole Stanley gimmick was kind of started.
Now, at the time, Chris, he was already, to this day, I really have no understanding of where his inspiration comes from. It is a completely unique, special, rarefied place where his thought process originates. Unequivocally, if there is such a thing as a genius, which I do believe there is, I would absolutely call Chris a genius. Absolutely. We had a character that he played that was called the Nerd. Okay? We referred to him as the Nerd. Those glasses are his real glasses, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Right? That was not part of the act. That's how he saw things, literally. His eyesight was that bad. There were, wait, hang on, let me get the perspective. There, half an inch of glasses, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he would come in. He had long hair at the time, and he would stick that up into a stocking cap, and he wore a trench coat, right? So he would come in, and he would start messing with people, right? Oh, you know, and just putting an energy in the room that wasn't there before the Nerd showed up.
So that was Alex Kane actually saying directly that basically Chris Stan ended up coming up with this particular character, and he would just kind of run amok within the studio and kind of make everything a bit more lively, maybe make some people feel uncomfortable. And I think this wasn't actually an uncommon thing. As a matter of fact, there's actually a TV show called In Living Color, and Damon Wayans did a character that basically was homeless. So I think it's not uncommon for people to try and find comedy through essentially some people's, shall we say, housing deficiencies.
Here, camouflage that for me. Now listen to me. I am in the business of signing up real live soldiers, maggot! Maggot? Hey, I ain't no maggot. Hey, I ain't never been with another man before. Who told you that, Clarence? He's lying. He's lying. I'm telling you. All right, once I was desperate. I needed the money. I was drunk and down out. Don't hold it. I don't have time for this.
And what is your name, sir?
Some people will find this to be, you know, offensive. And I can see why, but I just have that level of sense of humor, and honestly, this is kind of in my ballpark. So I think a lot of people at the time would just kind of like try and make themselves laugh. And I think Chris Stan came up with this Stanley character to just kind of reflect all of that. So to the point to where Stanley was kind of becoming more and more of a character that is just so well beloved. It resonated with audiences. And even if you see some of the live performances, sometimes the band will just be in the middle of a set just doing their thing, and all of a sudden you just get this homeless looking man just like stumble onto the stage, and it's like, should we call security? But then he starts breaking out into song, and it's like, and that's where everything comes from. You can't always judge a book by its cover, and sometimes people need to come up with characters and gimmicks in order to have themselves be set apart from the rest. I think, as a pro wrestling fan, I see this full front and center, but other people, I guess they don't have an imagination, or maybe they don't care. But basically, because of that, that is what stayed around. And I said at the start of the video, is Stanley alive? Yes or no? I think I can safely come up with somewhat of an answer, even though I don't really have the answer per se in front of me. Because of that, everything I'm about to say is a pinch of salt. And quite frankly, again, I actually kind of went into this thinking that Stanley actually did pass away. And I think the answer is kind of obvious for all of us right now. Essentially, Chris Stan is alive and well. But Stanley hasn't been seen in years. which is why the character is dead, but not the person.
This is the man, the biggest voice in rock and roll.
Wonderful, I love you. Thank you so much, man. Oh, thank you. Look at this. Look at this. We are here. Summertime, Farm Rock, 2014. You guys missed out on a great time, great weather. We had the women are beautiful everywhere. My gosh, thank you so much. Good friends, good spirit, great music.
Amen.
Magical day.
So I think that is kind of the best way I could probably sum up this video. I really want to go into more detail on just like how the band disbanded and essentially how the band got their start, and I guess I went into a little bit of that, but unfortunately, I guess you could say maybe it's kind of best that we don't know, because I think characters and bands like this need to exist for the sheer purpose of keeping that imagination alive. I think people that fall in love with a character, much like Stanley, I think it just resonates with people to where you could have fun and do great things in the process. Perhaps more people need to become pro wrestling fans to really understand, but who knows, maybe that's just my opinion. So I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the video. I really do appreciate everybody who stuck around for this long. I know this is not my typical videos that I kind of have been doing on the channel, at least in terms of what I have in the pipeline. So, but I did thought this would be still an interesting video with a unique perspective that you probably didn't have before. And I also kind of feel bad unveiling the mask, I guess we could say. And so maybe I should have kept the illusion alive and just kind of stick with that. I'm sorry. But anyway, like I said, I think I'm going to go ahead and just wrap up the video. Do let me know down in the comments what you think about Stanley, what you think about Life, Sex, and Death. Is it a band that you are familiar with? Or, because I'm going to tell you right now, we are going to be taking a look at Life, Sex, and Death. It is legitimately their only album that they ever released, Silent Majority. We are going to be taking a look at various different songs within this album, different other songs that is out there in the ether. I love Life, Sex, and Death. I think it's a great band, and I hope you guys do too. But anyway, let me know down in the comments everything that you want to see and hear about Life, Sex, and Death, about Stanley, and just kind of everything else in the world of music. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and end it here. Links down in the description below to support me and my channel. I really do appreciate those that do. And yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and call it. Born to lose, live to win. I love you guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.
Wings of a dove and you will rise. You will rise above. I must breathe the